It began when I was at the height of my ambition, chasing success with the kind of hunger that doesn't let you sleep at night. I had put in the hours, the work, the sacrifices that no one saw. I had missed birthdays, skipped dinners, and poured every ounce of myself into building something out of nothing. Finally, after years of struggle, I began to see the results. The recognition came slowly at first, but then faster, like a tide rolling in. People noticed me. Opportunities opened. My name carried weight in rooms where I had once been invisible. I thought I had earned my place, and in truth, I had. But that was when he appeared, the one who would later be known to me only as the classic cheat. At first, he played the role of a friend, a confidant, someone who seemed to admire my work. He praised my dedication, nodded along to my ideas, and carried himself with the charm of someone who knew how to win trust. I welcomed him in. I had no reason not to. I thought success was something to be shared, not stolen. I thought loyalty was natural when respect was mutual. The betrayal didn't happen in one grand moment. It was gradual, careful, like a thief studying the map before breaking into a vault. He learned everything about me: how I thought, how I worked, what risks I took, and what dreams I guarded most closely. He took notes in silence, waiting for the moment when my guard was down. And when it came, he struck. It started with him presenting my ideas as his own, in meetings I couldn't attend. At first, I brushed it off. What harm was there in letting a colleague echo my thoughts? But soon I saw the pattern. My words were leaving my mouth and arriving in his, rebranded as his genius. The strategies I had stayed up all night perfecting became the blueprints he flaunted as his creations. I watched as my hard-earned credibility shifted slowly toward him. His name rose while mine was quietly pushed into the background. The worst came when he made his boldest move yet. He took the work I had spent years building, my biggest project, the one that could define my career, and presented it as entirely his own. By the time I realized, it was too late. He had secured the credit, the applause, the spotlight. I was left standing in the shadows of my own success, suffocated by the weight of injustice. I will not lie. There were nights when anger consumed me, when I wanted to tear everything down and drag him with it. There were mornings when I wondered if I had wasted my life chasing something so fragile it could be stolen by a lie. I thought I had lost. I thought I had been erased. But life has a strange way of balancing the scales. Karma doesn't arrive on demand, but it always arrives. The cracks in his mask began to show. At first, no one noticed. He grew arrogant, drunk on the applause he thought he had earned. He stopped being careful. He no longer listened because he believed he was the smartest man in the room. Without me behind him, without my ideas fueling his rise, his brilliance dried up. Soon, people began to question him. The strategies that had once seemed flawless fell apart under pressure. Deadlines slipped. Promises failed. And when he tried to keep up the illusion, he reached again for theft. But this time, there was nothing left for him to take. The fall was not swift. It was slow, humiliating, and public. One betrayal surfaced, then another. Whispers spread, then accusations. The same mouths that once cheered his name turned against him, spitting it out like poison. In the end, he was left with nothing but a reputation stained beyond repair. He had climbed on my back, but when the truth came out, he fell harder than I ever could have imagined. And me? I did not have to lift a finger. I did not have to fight him, expose him, or ruin him. Life did it for me. All I had to do was keep working, keep believing, and trust that what is real will outlast what is fake. My success, though delayed, returned to me, not through vengeance, but through resilience. I stood where I belonged, not because I destroyed him, but because he destroyed himself. That is the curse of the classic cheat. They win in the short game, but the long game always belongs to truth. He took my success once, but he could not keep it because stolen things never last. Karma took him down, piece by piece, until the world saw him for what he truly was. And when the dust settled, I was still standing, stronger than ever, with my fire intact. He didn't just steal my work, he tried to steal my identity. That was the worst part. Success wasn't just about recognition to me. It was proof that every sacrifice I made meant something. Every sleepless night, every risk, every time I pushed through doubt, it was all carved into the foundation of what I was building. And to see him step into the light wearing my skin, carrying my words, standing on my shoulders while pretending it was his own strength, that cut deeper than anything else. There were days when I wanted to scream the truth out loud. I wanted to expose him, to burn down the illusion he had created. But something stopped me. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was wisdom, maybe it was just the quiet understanding that life has a way of bringing people exactly what they deserve. So I waited. I kept my head down and worked in silence. I knew who I was. I knew what I had created. And deep inside, I knew that truth cannot be buried forever. The world, however, has a way of testing your patience. Watching him climb higher and higher, receiving praise for my sweat and tears, was like swallowing fire every single day. People whispered his name as though it belonged to brilliance. They celebrated him as though he had carved his empire from stone with his bare hands. And I stood there, invisible, suffocating on the ashes of my stolen glory. But here is what the cheat never understood. Success that is stolen is never stable. It rots from the inside out. And the higher he climbed, the weaker the ground beneath him became. It started with small things. A deal he promised that fell apart because he couldn't deliver. A bold claim he made in a meeting that crumbled when someone asked him a real question. He tried to fake his way through it, but there's only so long you can pretend to be something you're not. Without me feeding him, without my ideas fueling his machine, his brilliance turned into dust. And when people began to doubt him, the same charm he once used to win them over started to feel hollow. Whispers began. Questions surfaced. And slowly, the applause turned into silence. I remember the day it all came crashing down. A project, his biggest yet, collapsed in spectacular fashion. Deadlines missed, investors furious, promises broken. People who had once stood behind him began to step away, one by one. The same crowd that lifted him up now pointed their fingers at him, accusing, demanding answers. And he had none. The mask he wore so carefully finally cracked, and the truth spilled out for everyone to see. He had built his empire on sand, and the tide had come to wash it away. When karma finally caught him, it didn't just knock him down, it stripped him bare. His reputation was ruined, his name became a warning rather than a badge of success, and the world turned its back on him. He was left with nothing but the shadow of what he had stolen, and shadows do not last long. And me? I didn't have to fight him. I didn't have to scream, or beg, or prove myself to anyone. I just kept going. I kept working. I kept building, quietly, patiently, and with the same fire that had carried me this far. When the dust settled, the truth shone brighter than any lie ever could. People saw what I had built, what was mine, what could never be stolen again. That was the lesson. The cheat can take what you have for a while, but they cannot take what you are. They cannot steal the soul of your work, the heart behind your effort, the resilience that rises even after betrayal. The classic cheat took my success once, but in the end, karma took him down. And I am still here, standing, thriving, unshaken, because truth lasts longer than lies, and real success cannot be stolen. He tried to humiliate me, to make the world believe that I had been weak, that I had faltered, that I was somehow incapable of earning what I had worked for. He spread little rumors, half-truths disguised as casual conversation, and leaned on every connection he could manipulate. The way he smiled while speaking, the way he projected confidence, made it almost believable. I remember sitting through meetings where he presented my ideas, my strategies, my hours of research as if they were his own, while I was forced to nod along, pretending I didn't notice. My chest would tighten, my mind would race, but I said nothing. I had learned, painfully, that confrontation wasn't always the fastest route to justice. Sometimes the universe had its own timing. And it did. Slowly, patiently. He became careless, overconfident, drunk on the illusion he had built. He stopped checking his sources, stopped paying attention to details, stopped respecting the very people he once manipulated. And then, like a storm that's been quietly gathering strength, karma hit. A critical error in one of his biggest projects caused a chain reaction. Contracts fell through, investors demanded answers, colleagues who once followed him began to question everything. The facade began to crumble. Each lie he had told, each stolen idea, each manipulation came back to haunt him. I watched it happen with a mix of disbelief and quiet satisfaction. I didn't gloat, I didn't need to. Life had a way of correcting itself, and the universe was far more efficient than I could ever be. His downfall was public, undeniable, and utterly irreversible. People who had once praised him now turned away, leaving him to face the wreckage alone. Meanwhile, I began to rebuild, not with anger, not with revenge, but with focus. I poured even more energy into my work, refined my strategies, and strengthened my relationships. Every success I achieved afterward was like a quiet victory, a testament not only to my skill, but to my resilience. My reputation, my credibility, my integrity, all things he had tried to diminish, grew stronger with each passing day. The irony was delicious. The higher he had tried to rise on my efforts, the further he fell when the truth came to light. And me? I was finally free. Free from the weight of betrayal, free from the fear of being overshadowed, free to stand in my own light without apologies or explanations. I realized that success stolen is temporary, but the fire that drives a person to create, innovate, and persevere, that is permanent. In the end, the classic cheat had underestimated two things: the durability of genuine effort and the inevitability of karma. He had thought he could steal, manipulate, and rise above others without consequence. But every misstep, every lie, every bit of dishonesty was meticulously accounted for by the very forces he ignored. He lost everything he thought he had earned. I reclaimed everything that had ever been mine and more. The experience taught me that betrayal, no matter how devastating, can be the forge that strengthens character, sharpens focus, and ignites a determination that cannot be extinguished. I now understand something fundamental. Cheats may temporarily ride the waves of others' hard work, but waves crash eventually. The tide always returns, and when it does, it brings justice with it. I am standing taller, stronger, and more determined than ever, not because I wanted revenge, but because I refused to let dishonesty define my path. The classic cheat took my success, but karma took him down. And I am still here, thriving, unshaken, with the fire of my own ambition burning brighter than ever.